Hello everyone, Chris here. As the ban list is fast approaching for Digimon, today I'll be talking about cards that in my opinion should be hit in order to bring some balance back to the game. To start off, I'm going to talk about cards that should be outright banned from the game. These cards are Gravity Crush, Hammer Spark, Blinding Ray, and Jack Raid. All these cards have the same function, which is to give 2 free memory for basically nothing. These cards were designed in an era of the game that was slow. Now that the game has sped up, these cards just give an unfair advantage. Blinding Ray, Hammer Spark, and Jack Ray have already been limited, but as Megidramon has proven, if your deck can draw enough, then you will see them. For that reason, all these cards should just be banned from the game. Another card that fits this category is Parabolic Junk. Yes, it requires a body on board to use, but black decks like Diaboromon and Abadamon can spam fodder, which they don't mind getting deleted. Therefore, eventually this card will also be abused, so banning it preemptively avoids this issue. Moving on to the cards that should be limited. The current 3 top decks in the game are Megidramon, and anything based on the Gil engine, Sakuya, and Royal Knights. So therefore, I'll be looking at these decks and seeing what could be hit in order to slow them down or bring balance to them. So, starting off with Megidramon or anything that uses the Gil engine. This includes Phoenixmon or just the Gil engine on its own. So besides Gravity Crush, there are 2 other cards that should be looked into when dealing with this deck. The first is the Rush Guilmon that the deck can just spam from trash again and again. The reason why this card is a problem is that it gains Rush once you build up enough trash. And with Megidramon, you're able to use the same Guilmon again and again and therefore be very aggressive. However, if you want to hit this card, I believe it would be best to ban the card instead, since Megidramon only needs to see 1 before they can start off their toxic combo. The second card, and the most likely to be hit, is Guilmon X. This card follows the same patterns as other Broken X antibodies in the past, Greymon X antibody and Gurumon X antibody. The reason why this card is a problem is the fact that if you're able to evolve over Guilmon or have X antibody in the sources, when it's deleted, you get to spam out Guilmon from trash. And this is what triggers the whole combo in Megidramon decks. So, and since it only has 6000 DP, the chances of it dying in security is also very high. Furthermore, besides Megidramon, hitting this card would also slow down Gallantmon, which is also another top deck in the meta, since it provides draw and trash, which is useful for the decks, as well as doesn't provide them with follow-up when their Gallantmon stack gets deleted. Therefore, I believe the most likely hit to Megidramon, Gil Engine, and Gallantmon would be Guilmon X antibody. The next deck we're going to talk about balancing in the meta is Sakuyamon, and I believe the most likely hit to Sakuya would be Taomon from BT17. The reason why this card should be hit is when Digivolving effect, which allows you to use a plugin or any yellow option card for a reduced cost of 2. It makes it quite generic. What also pushes this over the edge is its Inherited, which pretty much does the same thing. So you can use 2 yellow option cards or plugin without paying the cost, and this just speeds up Sakuyamon to the point where they can go from level 4 all the way up to a level 7 potentially for such a reduced cost. If we do limit this Taomon, they'll be forced to use either the Ace, which will punish them if the stack gets removed with Ace Overflow, or the BT10 Taomon, which only allows them to use a plugin, therefore restricting which options they can use and instead forcing them to rely on the Digivolution plugin instead. The next card that could potentially be limited in the deck is the Digivolution plugin. What this card basically does is lets them Digivolve into Sakuyamon or Taomon without paying the cost. The reason why this card is a problem is not only can it be recycled, but it can also be reused to go into your Sakuyamon or Sakuya X and therefore ramp up the combo even further. However, I believe hitting this card would kill the deck instead, or slow it down to the point where it's unusable. Therefore, I would like to suggest a better alternative instead of limiting the Digivolution plugin. Instead of limiting Digivolution plugin S, I believe a better alternative will be ban pairing the Digivolution plugin with Yellow Scramble. What this prevents is them being used in the same deck. So Sakuya can use the Digivolution plugin to easily go into the Sakuyamon or Sakuyamon X, but without access to the Yellow Scramble, they cannot just cheat into Ruin Mode or Volderon, and those are the two most aggravating things about the deck. This way, the deck can still remain fast going up into level 6, but then they can't then combo into Volderon or Ruin Mode to lock out your opponent quite easily, and instead have to pay the proper cost for those two cards. The next decks that should be reined in is Royal Knights. Royal Knights, unlike Megidramon or Sakuya, don't feel toxic, but just feels incredibly strong, and they have been strong for quite a few formats now. Therefore, they should be reined in one way or another just to slow the deck down, but not kill it. The most likely card to be hit in the Royal Knights deck is Royal Knights of the Purge, which was released in BT13. The problem with this card is that it was not designed for a specific card in mind, and that card is BT20 Omnimon X. With Royal Knights of the Purge, not only can you tuck in Omni X under King Drasil, but it allows you to play Omni X from Drasil the following turn, and Omni X by itself is a very powerful card, because not only does it gain rush from the Royal Knights of the Purge, which allows you to do one check, but it can also do a second check since it already has the ability end of turn to swing without suspending. This gives the deck so much speed and power that they don't have to tuck in as many Royal Knights as before under King Drasil to play out for the final endgame. Therefore, limiting Royal Knights of the Purge would be the most likely hit to Royal Knights. The next card that could be limited in the deck could be the Megidramon from BT20 as well. The reason why this Megidramon is so strong is for its inherited effect when it's tucked under King Drasil, which is when you're down to one security, you can play it out and immediately go into Omni X. The reason why this is a problem is because a Megidramon is counted as the X antibody option card, and that therefore gives the full effect of Omni X, which is first to delete everything but one body on board, then bottom deck the last body. This feels extremely powerful, just an instant board wipe, which feels like an ace play but without the memory overflow, and it again as well just feels too broken as a counter attack. Instead, what they should have done is make it that a Megidramon doesn't count as the X antibody, therefore Omni X doesn't get its full effect and instead gets a bottom deck instead. However, the fact that this card can just instantly change the game completely in one single turn is a reason why this card should be limited to. An interesting limit to the deck would be the egg, which is King Drasil 7d6. The reason why limiting this card will not kill the deck is all the effects needed for Royal Knights is already as its main effect, which is to tuck all the Royal Knights on the field underneath, and then the cost reduction for your Royal Knights, so it's also the main effect. The reason why you would need multiple of this card is for its inherited, which lets you gain the memory back when you play a Royal Knights option card. Limiting this card wouldn't kill the deck, but would slow it down since they will not be able to play their Royal Knights option cards for free or cheaply anymore, and therefore they would have to think about whether they want to play a Royal Knight on their turn or instead use the option card. Therefore, limiting this card would be a good option. The other reason why limiting this card would also be good is that we already know that King Drasil is getting more support in BT23, so limiting this card would not be a problem. So far we have talked about hitting the strongest decks in the meta, Megidramon, Sakuyamon and Royal Knights, but I also believe we should also take into account decks that are lurking in the background, and currently the deck that is waiting to rise to the top is Galaxy. Galaxy has caused a split in the community and has been a problem since EX5 over a year ago now. And since it also recently just got a new wave of support in BT22, I believe hitting some of the old cards would help slow the deck down but not kill it. To hit Galaxy on a meta level, the best card to hit would be the Red Coincider from EX5. The reason this card needs to be addressed is due to the second effect, which allows any of your Digimon to digivolve into any card by attacking the top card of any of your Light Fang or Nightclaw cards at the bottom Digivolution card. This isn't usually a problem when there's only one stack on board, but if there are two stacks, one big stack with a level 6 and one small stack, what this allows you to do is tuck the Digivolution card of the small stack and let you digivolve into a level 7 on the big stack for free. The reason this is a problem is level 7s usually cost a lot of memory. For example, currently this card is being used to digivolve into Paladin mode Ace for free without paying the cost. So you're going into a big boss monster without paying the cost and with no consequences. So for that reason, and to just slow the deck down by a fraction, limiting the Coincider Tamer would be a good choice. The second Galaxy card to hit is not a card that is meta relevant, but just a card that is toxic, and that is the Blue Scion Co from EX5. The reason this card needs to be hit or banned is that over the months that has been released, it has promoted an unhealthy way to play the game, or which is to skip your opponent's turn. And skipping your opponent's turn in any card game is not healthy or a good way to play the game. Therefore, to prevent this way of healthy playing, hitting or banning the Blue Scion Co would be the best choice. So, these are the cards that I feel like should be addressed in the next ban list to reduce the power level of the top decks and also slow the game down so the other decks can keep up. What are your thoughts? And if you have any comments or any other choices you feel like should be hit, please leave them in the comments. Thank you all for listening. This is Krish signing off. Damn it. Damn it. I was almost there. Okay.